That's why I wanted to do this, because I knew people did not know what we're doing.
The Brooklyn Diocese is producing an informational video to address parishioners' concerns about the sexual abuse crisis in the church. Tear gas fired at the U.S.-Mexico border to repel 500 migrants storming the barrier to enter the country. Tensions flaring on the high seas as warships from Russia and Ukraine confront each other. Plus, the choir of Our Lady of Grace Church is the opening act at Radio City's iconic Christmas show. The news starts right now.
We'll get some of the leadership, and then we'll have something that we can use with everyone.
Bishop DIMARZIO is communicating with the faithful, answering questions about the sexual abuse crisis at special meetings held throughout the Diocese of Brooklyn. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. The sessions will be used in a new video so that pastors can share important information with their parishioners. Currents News' Tim Harfman is here now with those details. Tim.
Liz, Bishop DIMARZIO says it was important to hold the sessions after the state's Attorney General issued subpoenas to all of the 8 dioceses in New York State to hand over all files related to abuse cases dating back to 1950. The sessions were packed with information and a lot of questions were asked. Here's a closer look.
Information is hard to get out. That's why I wanted to do this, because I knew people did not know what we're doing.
Bishop Nicholas DIMARZIO is listening. Under his leadership, the Diocese of Brooklyn is producing an informational video that pastors will soon be able to share with their parishioners that addresses the recent headlines about the sexual abuse crisis in the church.
It's impossible to reach everybody, but now with these 4 sessions, we'll get some of the leadership, and then we'll have something that we can use with everyone.
The video will feature highlights from 4 recent gatherings called Regional Meetings with Bishop DIMARZIO and the Lay Faithful that took place at 4 parishes. In all, approximately 1,000 parish leaders attended. Bishop DIMARZIO was joined by Vicar General and Vicar for Clergy and Consecrated Life, Auxiliary Bishop Raymond Geppetto, Vice Chancellor and Victim Assistance Coordinator Jasmine Salazar, and Safe Environment Coordinator Mary Ellen Quinn. Attendees were allowed to ask Bishop DIMARZIO any question.
Where is all this money coming from to pay the victims?
What we have done is we have mortgaged some buildings that are generating income, and that income is going to pay back the mortgage, and we will sell more property.
I'm asking you if you will commit to releasing the names of all the abusive priests and their acts.
We have not released all the names, and we will when the program finishes. That'll be at the end of the year.
Bishop DIMARZIO is referring to the Independent Reconciliation and Compensation Program, or IRCP. Initiated by the diocese last year, survivors could come forward and work with an independent law firm to reach a solution regarding their claim. Bishop DIMARZIO says that program helped the diocese get a better understanding of the scope of the cases that spanned decades.
The fact of the matter is we only knew 14%. You cannot cover up what you don't know, okay? So the rest of it was unknown to us.
Before the question and answer sessions, the audience was presented with important information about the crisis and what the church has done to prevent sexual abuse.
These are probably your most informed parishioners, and I'm sure there are some of them that this is the first time they're hearing that information. So the general population of parishioners at large, they may be unaware.
Data and graphs from an independent study conducted by researchers at John Jay College of Criminal Justice show that the crisis peaked in the 1980s and that the majority of abusers were priests who did their seminary studies in the 1950s and 60s.
An epidemic is something that has a beginning, a high point, and then ends. And this is the key thing we need to understand tonight, that the sexual abuse crisis really has extinguished itself.
Participants also were shown videos, one with testimonies from sexual abuse survivors within the Diocese of Brooklyn.
The church has played a role with therapy. The church has played a role with all types of support that you do need.
Salazar talked about the outreach the Office of Victim Assistance does for survivors and the programs that are in place to help them.
The hope is with this information that's being shared, more and more will know that if you are a survivor or come across a survivor, that the message be communicated. You are cared for and you are not alone.
After the meetings, the feedback was positive.
It was good to know that, the programs that they have for them. I didn't know about that.
I think it was very good that the bishop, provided information on the accuracy of what's actually happening. It's important for us to get our information from our bishop and not just through the media.
The informational video will be released in the coming weeks, and for easy access, all of the information will soon be posted on a separate page of the Diocese of Brooklyn's website. Liz?
All right, Tim, thank you so much for that report. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops established what is known as the Dallas Charter in 2002 to combat and prevent sexual abuse. Some of those measures include creating the Office of Victim Assistance to help individuals who come forward with allegations of abuse. The office provides counseling, referrals for therapy, and other important resources. Every employee of the Brooklyn Diocese, including students, undergoes mandatory training designed to spot the signs of abuse and how to stop it. Bishop DiMarzio meets with survivors and listens to them carefully. One result of those talks is the annual Mass of Hope and Healing in the diocese. The diocese also has a toll-free and confidential sexual abuse reporting line. That number is 888-634-4499. And for more information, go to the Diocese of Brooklyn's website, dioceseofbrooklyn.org, and click on Protecting Our Children. Chicago's Cardinal Blaise Cupich is the hand-picked choice of Pope Francis to help organize February's Vatican Summit on sexual abuse. The Holy Father has summoned bishop leaders from around the world, and the goal is to prevent abuse and protect children. In Brooklyn and around the world, places of worship were being illuminated in red, the color of martyrs, part of a campaign spearheaded by the papal charity Aid to the Church in Need. The effort is being called Courage in Red Week, and it's designed to bring attention to the plight of persecuted Christians. At St. Joseph's Co-Cathedral, Monsignor KIERAN Harrington led the congregation in the celebration of Solemn Vespers for Christ the King. One of the top officials from Aid to the Church in Need was there.
It's very important that people stay focused and remember that there are a great many people suffering for Jesus Christ, pretty much as they did in the early years of the church. Indeed, earlier this year, the Colosseum in Rome was bathed in red light. In memory of persecuted Christians. And of course, that's where the persecution was greatest in the life of the early church.
The most important thing is that we continue to keep them in our prayer. We're Christians, and so what is it we believe? We believe in the power of prayer. And so the most important thing is we earnestly and ardently pray for those who are suffering. Then the next thing we can do is recognize that we can help them by our almsgiving, by the sacrifices we make in terms of our generosity to churches like Aid to Church in Need or Catholic Near East Welfare Association or other organizations.
The Courage in Red campaign's goal is to create more attention about persecution in the hope that greater awareness will lead to greater action around the world. Monsignor Harrington will be on Currents News tomorrow. He'll describe his experience with persecuted Christians during a recent visit to the Middle East. President Trump says he'll close the border permanently if needed after migrants from a large caravan aggressively tried to storm the barrier yesterday. Dozens were arrested, and Kristen Holmes has more from Washington.
Tension on the southern border as thousands of Central American migrants seeking asylum in the U.S. hope to enter the country through Mexico. An escalation Sunday. Border Patrol agents firing tear gas at migrants, including women and children, after a protest devolved into chaos. Wow! Hundreds of migrants overwhelming Mexican police and blockades, attempting to enter the country illegally.
The group immediately started throwing rocks and debris at our agents, taunting the agents. And we had 2 or 3 agents at a time initially facing hundreds of people at a time. They deployed tear gas to protect themselves and to protect the border.
No one wants any border officer to be in danger, but from what we know, this was an overuse of force. I mean, there are women and children out there. Using tear gas in this situation does not seem justified.
U.S. officials arresting dozens, shutting down the busiest port of entry along its Mexico border. President Trump seizing on the unrest.
Mexico wants to see if they can get it straightened out, but we've, during certain times, as you know, closed the border. They're not coming into the United States. They will not be coming in.
But not all Republicans support a border shutdown.
We would prefer that we keep it open, so let's work really hard to make sure we're addressing the asylum seekers before they actually come over the border.
In Washington, Kristen Holmes, Currents News.
3,000 Catholics are backing the migrants massing on the U.S. border. They signed a petition organized by the Franciscan Religious Network promising to welcome them. Also tonight, a high seas naval conflict between Russia and Ukraine is raising tensions between the two countries. It began after a Russian ship rammed a Ukrainian gunboat. 6 Ukraine sailors were injured. The Kremlin said the Ukrainians illegally entered Russian waters. Matthew Chance reports from Moscow on the rising tensions.
Already the situation is escalating dangerously, with the Ukrainian president calling for a state of emergency to be declared, an unprecedented measure on which the parliament of the country will vote shortly. Also, an emergency session of the UN Security Council is being convened to discuss the volatile situation. There's been very little, though, by way of Russian comment on the naval clash, but Russian state television has dubbed it a provocation orchestrated by Ukraine to disrupt a forthcoming meeting between President Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin at the G20 summit in Argentina.
Russian special forces captured the 3 Ukraine ships and are holding them in port. Late today, Ukraine declared martial law in regions bordering Russia. Pope Francis is asking for prayers for Ukraine. On Sunday, he recalled the Holodomor genocide when the Soviet Union forced a mass starvation that killed millions of Ukrainians.
L'immagine è dolorosa. La ferita del passato sia un appello per tutti perché tali tragedie non si ripetano mai più.
Among those who suffered through the genocide, the family of Ukraine's ambassador to the Holy See, Melissa BUTZ, is standing by at the Vatican with her story.
In June 1933, 1 million Ukrainians died by forced starvation perpetrated by the Soviet Union. Now, 85 years later, Pope Francis remembers this as one of the worst genocides of the last century.
From 1932 to 1933, a great genocide took place in Ukraine, killing millions through a mass starvation by the Soviet Union. The government confiscated all grain, seeds, and potatoes from households. It then sold more than 1.7 million tons of grain to Western markets during that year.
The family of my mother, her youngest sister, she was about 3 years old. She was taken by other people. They took it into the house, and just 10 minutes more, and they prepared a very big pan with the boiling water, and just they were ready to cook and to eat. This small child, you could imagine, that's my mother told me the story.
She said not many journalists reported the truth, yet the Vatican did, and continues to, with Pope Francis even writing about it in a book, Heaven and Earth.
He mentioned different genocides of the last century. Yes, it is very important for all Ukrainian people that the Pope recognized it in such a way.
Researchers estimate the slow starvation killed 24 people every minute, 1,440 every hour, and 34,560 every day. This demonstrates the shocking reality the famished Ukrainians lived, and remember, 85 years later.
In Ukrainian, Holodomor means to kill by starvation. Yet the Vatican City-State is one of only 16 countries to recognize this as a genocide. At the Vatican, Melissa BUTZ, Currents News. Back to you in New York, Liz.
Thank you, Melissa. Sister Cecilia Maria Rozak has returned to the Lord. Believed to be the oldest nun in the world, she died at the age of 110. During the Holocaust, the Polish religious hid members of the Jewish resistance from Nazi persecution. There's a lot more news headed your way. An isolated tribe off India killed him, but before he died, an American Christian missionary put his final thoughts down on paper. The details of what he wrote are ahead. An update tonight on that big world meeting of families held 2 months ago in Ireland. Father Christopher Henyu will be here to talk about what was accomplished. And an important programming note to share with you. Currents News will be moving to new time slots. Starting Monday, December 3rd, the news will air a half hour earlier at 7 p.m. right here on NET. Reruns will air at 10 p.m. and then the next morning again at 7:30 a.m. So mark your calendars. We'll be right back. We are learning new details about an American missionary who was killed on a restricted island off of India. The 26-year-old was trying to convert an isolated tribe to Christianity. Now, a letter detailing his plans has surfaced. Paulo Sandoval has more.
This is one of the oldest and most isolated tribes in the world, and authorities say they're responsible for last week's killing of American missionary John Allen Chau. This archived footage from Survival International provides some of the few existing images of the tribe known as the Sentinelese. They live in complete isolation on the tiny island of North Sentinel. According to Indian officials, Chau illegally paid fishermen to take him to the isolated island, hoping to convert the tribe to Christianity. According to journal entries left with the fishermen and shared with the Washington Post, the 26-year-old wrote, "I hollered, 'My name is John. I love you, and Jesus loves you.' He was then reportedly shot at by a member of the tribe with an arrow piercing his Bible. The next day, Chau made a second attempt, but never returned. The fisherman he hired later reported seeing the young man's body buried on the beach by tribe members. In 2006, the same tribe killed 2 poachers who had been illegally fishing near their island. Survival International, a group advocating for tribal people, believes the natives' decision to remain isolated should be respected.
They've made it very clear they don't want contact. Somebody comes, they have no idea what he's coming for and why. I think it's far more self-defense than it is murder.
On social media, Chau's family wrote their son loved God, life, helping those in need, and had nothing but love for the Sentinelese people. We forgive those reportedly responsible for his death, they wrote. All they can do is wait to find out when or if their son's body will be recovered.
That was Paulo Sandoval reporting. Tonight, supporters are saying Bishop Peter Schau seems serene after being released from communist custody. The underground cleric had been held for more than 2 weeks, and the faithful feared he was being brainwashed. The bishop was appointed to his post by Pope Francis. It has been 2 months since the World Meeting of Families in Dublin, Ireland, where thousands gathered to hear from Pope Francis in the midst of the clerical sex abuse scandal that rattled the church. Father Christopher Henyu was in Ireland for the event, and he joins us now. Father Henyu, you led us into the event, and now you're here to recap it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. You've had some time now to look back on the World Meeting of Families, to take in all the meetings, the masses, even those private moments where we heard that the Holy Father spoke with victims of clerical sex abuse, and then of course the celebrations. Did all of this meet your expectations? So much happened.
So much happened in such a short amount of time.
Yes.
I mean, the Pope was there for a day and a half, really, and he accomplished so much. He traveled around so much. He was able to get to Knock Shrine on the west coast of Ireland, as well as accomplish all that he did in Dublin City. There were some Irish people that wanted him to stay longer. They wondered why was his trip so short, and tried to criticize him for only spending such a short amount of time. But whenever the Holy Father visits a country, it's a blessed experience. And I think that they'll be unpacking a lot of that and the fruits of that blessing for many, many years to come. It did meet my expectations. It was a wonderful time to be able to bring 50 pilgrims from the Diocese of Brooklyn there.
That's my next question for you. Now that some time has passed, would you say that you've seen the evidence of the Pope's message to them in play in the diocese?
In play in our diocese?
In our diocese, yeah.
Yeah, he whenever the Pope speaks, the words are there and are heard by all the nations. There was a part where the Pope, during the Mass at Phoenix Park, which is the beautiful image that's on the screen behind us, when he, at the very beginning of the Mass, as we call to mind our sins, the penitential rite, the Holy Father used that opportunity to apologize on behalf of the Church. He used that moment to offer the Church's penitential rite. I thought it was tremendously powerful, and myself and many of the priests surrounding me were in tears.
So many poignant moments during the event, and watching the way it affects you really drives it home for me. This is a very personal experience for you, and I have to get this last question in because I want to hear your opinion on this. The Irish primate, which is Archbishop Eamon Martin, he said that he felt that Carlo Maria Vigano, he hijacked, those were his words, the meeting by releasing that 11-page document. Do you agree?
I think there was
the document, of course, just to clarify for our viewers, the document of the mishandling of the clerical sex abuse case.
Yes, I definitely think that the timing was intentional. After such a beautiful event on Saturday night for the World Meeting of Families in Crow Park, which was stunning, to wake up the next morning and to have this report just all over the news. It did definitely, it didn't help the situation in a church that's so divided at the moment, and a situation led by the evil one who does divide. That report would create more confusion.
I need the final word on this. We have about 30 seconds. There are so many problems plaguing Ireland, all of which existed before and still persist. We have the pain of the people that is very deep, issues gay marriage, abortion, decline in vocations. In the time we have left, can faith be restored?
All things are possible with God. I pray every day for Ireland. It's part of my new role as an Irish apostolate coordinator, but also just that God will prevail and that good will continue to come. There's a long way to go in Ireland. There's a long way to go here in America. The world has a lot of healing that's needed, but with God, all things are possible. We have to believe that.
Perfect last word. Thank you. Reality tinged with hope.
Amen.
And I appreciate that. Thank you, Father Henry.
Thank you.
Still to come on Currents News, the Catholic Diocese in Sacramento does something special for youngsters who lost their homes to California's wildfires. And the children's choir from Our Lady of Grace Church in Howard Beach is the opening act on a very big stage. Do you have a story idea? Something happening in your parish we should know about? Because we want to hear from you, so you keep this email handy, newstips@desalesmedia.org. Email us. We will be right back. The Diocese of Sacramento is helping out students who lost their homes in the deadly camp wildfires in Northern California. All education costs, including tuition, uniforms, school supplies, and hot lunches, will be provided to students in more than 36 Catholic schools. The Catholic school superintendent is encouraging those interested to contact the Sacramento Diocese.
Knowing that families have been scattered across the north and the Sacramento area, we just thought it would be good to open those desks to kids to get them back into school.
Over 30,000 people lost their homes to the campfire. Here in New York City, a very special singing group opened for the Radio City Rockettes and their spectacular Christmas show.
And the angels sang, angels, glory to our King.
The youth choir from Our Lady of Grace Church in Howard Beach took the stage in front of the audience attending the Christmas show. The youth choir landed the gig over the summer and spent the entire time rehearsing for Saturday's big performance, and they sounded great. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas, and just a reminder that Currents News is moving to a new time slot. Starting Monday, December 3rd, the news will air at 7 p.m. As always, thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. I hope to see you again next time.